Meta Platforms Meta, Beginner's Guide. If you have ever scrolled Instagram, sent a WhatsApp message, or watched a reel on Facebook, you have used a Meta product. Meta is the world's largest social media company, and what makes it interesting is not just that it owns 4 of the most used apps on the planet, it is that it has quietly become one of the biggest spenders on artificial intelligence on Earth. Quick reminder, this is educational only, not investment advice. So, what does Meta actually do? Meta really only has 2 business lines, and the size gap between them is enormous. The first is called Family of Apps, that is Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Threads bundled together. Family of Apps brought in about $199 billion of revenue in 2025, which is 99% of the whole company. Almost all of that money comes from advertising. Brands and small businesses pay Meta to put ads in front of you while you scroll, and Meta uses AI, artificial intelligence, the same family of technology behind ChatGPT, to figure out which ad you are most likely to actually click on. In the first quarter of 2026, the number of ads Meta showed grew 19%, and the price per ad grew 12%. That is the engine of the whole company. The second business line is Reality Labs, and it is a totally different animal. Reality Labs builds the Quest virtual reality headsets, the Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses, and a virtual world called Horizon. Reality Labs only made about $2 billion in 2025, that is the 1%, and it actually lost roughly $19 billion that year. So one tiny part of Meta is a hardware bet on the future, bleeding cash while the giant advertising business funds it. The bright spot, Ray-Ban Meta glasses sales tripled in 2025. Across both businesses, Meta reached 3.56 billion daily active people in the most recent quarter, that is DAP, daily active people, which just means humans who open at least one of Meta's apps in a single day. Roughly 4 out of every 10 humans on the planet. So, who does Meta compete with, and how does it win? In social media, Meta competes most directly with TikTok for short-form video attention, and with YouTube, which is owned by Google. In messaging, WhatsApp competes with Apple's iMessage. In advertising overall, the big rival is Google, with smaller chunks going to Amazon and TikTok. The official analysis we are working from rates Meta's moat meaning competitive advantage, the thing that keeps rivals from catching up as wide. That is the strongest rating. There are 3 reasons. First, network effects at a scale no rival can touch. Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp each by themselves have more users than any single competitor's whole platform. The more people who are on Meta's apps, the more useful those apps become to everyone else, and the better Meta's AI gets at figuring out what you want to see. Second, advertising lock-in. More than 10 million businesses run ads on Meta, and they have wired their workflows into Meta's AI tools with internal names like Andromeda, GM, Lattice, and Adaptive Ranking. Switching to a different ad platform would mean rebuilding all that plumbing, so most advertisers do not. Third, sheer infrastructure spending. Meta plans to spend $125 to $145 billion on capital expenditure in 2026, CapEx, which is just the money a company spends on long-lived things like buildings, servers, and chips. That single year of spending is larger than the entire annual revenue of most of Meta's competitors. Meta is buying GPUs from NVIDIA and AMD, GPUs being graphics processing units, the chips that run AI workloads, and also building its own custom AI chips in partnership with Broadcom. Only Google can match the scale. What are the key drivers for the business over the past 5 years? 3 forces drove Meta's growth over the last 5 years. The first is AI-powered advertising. Back in 2021 and 2022, Apple rolled out a privacy change called App Tracking Transparency, or ATT, which made it much harder for any app to follow you across the internet. Meta's ad business got hit hard, and many people thought the company was in real trouble. Instead, Meta rebuilt its entire advertising stack on top of new AI models, the ones called GM, lattice, Andromeda, and adaptive ranking, and used them to figure out which ad to show you using only the signals it had. The result is that Meta is now monetizing ads at record levels. Video generation tools and a product called Partnerships ads each run at $10 billion in annualized revenue. One specific upgrade, adaptive ranking, lifted conversions, the rate at which someone who sees an ad actually buys, by 1.6%, which sounds tiny but is huge at Meta's scale. The second force was a major restructuring that management called the Year of Efficiency. In 2022 and 2023, Meta laid off more than 21,000 people, about 25% of its staff, and cut back spending growth on reality labs. Operating margin, OM, is the share of every revenue dollar that becomes profit before interest and taxes, had collapsed to 20% in late 2022. It then climbed all the way back to a peak of 48% in late 2024 and sits at 41% today as AI infrastructure spending picks up again. Management has announced another round of headcount cuts for May 2026, signaling the cost discipline continues. The third force is plain old engagement. Time spent on Instagram Reels grew 10% in the first quarter of 2026 thanks to better AI recommendations. Facebook's video time was up 8% globally, the biggest quarterly gain in 4 years. Threads, Meta's text-based app, keeps growing. And Meta is now using AI to automatically dub videos into different languages, reaching more than 1 billion weekly viewers across Facebook and Instagram. More time on the app means more ads, which means more revenue. To wrap up, so at the simplest level, Meta is a giant AI-powered advertising company built on top of 4 of the world's most used social and messaging apps, with a small and very expensive side bet on virtual reality and smart glasses. As a learner, the things worth keeping an eye on are how the smart glasses business scales in 2026, whether the next wave of generative AI advertising tools keeps lifting engagement, and how Meta's enormous infrastructure spending eventually translates or does not translate into new revenue streams. This was educational only, not investment advice. Thanks for listening.